Thank you, Tom Hum and Loretta Lum, for joining me today. I'm so glad to get to speak with both of you and learn from both of you and your life experiences a little bit. So, Tom, you have had quite the run in your 94 years. You were elected to the San Diego City Council in 1963. You played a major role in the development of downtown. You have artwork in the San Diego Chinese Historical Museum. The list goes on and on. So today I'd like to talk a little bit about your second book, The Watermelon Story, which you have donated copies to us. Thank you. And in your book, you share about a lesson that your father taught you and your 11 siblings. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Yes, about responsibility and caring for one another through a watermelon. So my first question to you is, how does the importance of families passing down life lessons through generations, how did that inspire your writing for The Watermelon Story? Why did you feel it was such an important story to write?
Well, you know, stories have to have a beginning from way back. And it goes back with my father when he came to America when he was 15. That was 1909. And one of the first places he went to when he got off the ship on the boat in San Francisco, he was taken to a Presbyterian church in Chinatown, San Francisco. And there he learned the Bible story of David and Goliath. He was so impressed with David, he adopted that as his American name, David Hum. So he eventually, shortly, he came to San Diego where he had extensive families there. And so he became a fruit peddler. And later he opened his own warehouse called David Produce Company. And we had the company for about 80 years in the family. But anyway, that was the beginning. And so from there, when he reached an age to be married, he went back to China. And there his parents and some friends with a daughter met in a grocery store, and that's how he met his potential wife. And so they married and brought her to America, and they had 12 children, 9 boys and 3 girls. The story goes on that with 12 children, naturally the mother can't take care of them all. The oldest boy, Jim, went to the produce market to work with my dad, and as his company was growing. And so the second brother, Alan, myself, and the next brother, Wellman, and the next brother, Herbert, we were there to take care of the younger ones, the younger brothers and sister. So we each were, took the responsibility of the one that we take care of. We went, changed diapers and did the work, helped feed them and so forth. So that's how we work. We worked together, we were assigned. And so that was basically the structure of our family.
Well, that is amazing and wonderful. You are the 3rd oldest in your family, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. I remember reading it in your book. Yeah, that's definitely, and those are irreplaceable experiences for everyone involved, I'm sure. It's all hands on deck. We got to look out for one another, right?
Yes. Well, you know, with 12 children, and my dad had a requirement. Every day we had dinner together. Mm-hmm. At 5 o'clock that time. And we'll close the radio, lay down our books, and we come to the table, large table that held all the 12 kids and my mother and he. So there'd be 14 of us. And so one of the things he would ask us after dinner, he'll say, all right, children, starting from Jim, tell me what you did today in school. And so we would talk about school and these things. And he was very, let's say, always concerned about our homework and things like that. After dinner, all the dishes were removed and everybody sat at their section of the table to do the studying. So So that was my dad. Uh, Responsibility, eat well, and took care of the younger ones.
There you go. I love it. That's amazing. So with this idea of intergenerational conversations in mind, have either of you, Loretta or Tom, seen a benefit in sitting and reading with the children to communicate those important life lessons, whether with your own children or grandchildren, or when you were a child? Was reading ever an avenue to teach those lessons?
Yes. Well, when I was young, my oldest sister had the responsibility of taking care of the younger ones, and I was the third youngest. So she would make sure that we took our baths, got into our pajamas, and then we all sat around on the bed and she would read to us. So that's my first experience with loving books. It was because she loved books and she wanted us to also, read. So following that, I mean, I was a librarian for 26 years in Hawaii. And as a school librarian, I always had to choose books to motivate children to read. And that was the important part of my job, besides keeping the library in order. Mm-hmm. So that children love books, and they love the illustrations, they love words, especially funny words like in Dr. Seuss. Mm-hmm. So that has been, the way that I have passed on my love of reading to my children and to the many children that I've had in the library. To me, modeling reading is very important. Mm-hmm. If people don't have books in their homes, they just don't have that opportunity. So libraries to me is very important, and librarians are very important.
Agreed, for sure.
7 years ago, I took an x-ray, free x-ray downtown for the health department. They had a trailer downtown there. So I took an x-ray and they called me back the second time for another x-ray. So the second time they told me, they say, Tom, you have an early case of TB, tuberculosis. That was 70 years ago. I was 23 years old then, 23, 24. So when I went to the hospital, I took a lot of my artwork with me. Mm. And so I would draw pictures and paint and so forth, pass it around. And one day the head nurse came to me and said, Tom, I like your paintings. I have a son who's 12 years old who loves animals and he loves music as well. Can you paint me 4 animals with 4 different instruments for them, for the animals to play the instruments? I said, sure I can. So anyway, it took me a little while to do that. So in painting, instead of painting 4 animals with 4 instruments, I painted 67 animals, different animals, cat, dogs, rabbits, panda bear, monkeys, and so forth. 67 of different instruments. The cats played the violin, the dog played the trumpet, and the cow played the saxophone, and so forth. And so anyway, that's what I did. When the art show came up a couple of years ago, when they wanted to show my paintings, I remember that tracing paper I made. It was almost 70 years ago. I went into my files and found the tracing paper. I still have them. So I did a painting of it, and this is the painting.
Wow. Look at all of them. It's a whole orchestra.
And a whole orchestra. You see they're playing different instruments.
Yes.
That's
amazing.
Okay. And so doing this, I wrote a short story on this. And the question is this: animals, the cats are afraid of the dogs, the lions might eat the pig, and all these, they don't have all the things in common. But in the picture here, they do have the commonality of music together. So I wrote a book, and it's been printed. I'm going to get them. We made thousands of copies. And
Wow.
anyway, the story is this. The world is made up of many races, and they have different cultures and all these different people on earth. And they have one thing in common. They have music. They all have their music. It's a question of getting people together and make music together. So my book is about animals coming together, making an orchestra led by the owl, the wise owl, and so forth, and the lion playing the piano. So anyway, I'm going to get these books in pretty soon. They're all printed. So anyway, I'm going to pass them on to you folks. But I just want to share that with you.
Yes, thank you. That's amazing. Yeah, there's a harmony amongst everybody.
That's right. Yeah, people, music can be a harmony.
Mm-hmm.
You have different culture, different foods and things, but we all have the commonality of music.
Just this morning, we were talking about how he never intended this painting to be a book or to lead writing a book. But when people saw the picture, they said, wow, gee, these are natural enemies. Some of those animals are natural enemies, cats and dogs, they fight like cats and dogs. And that it's a story that would resonate, especially at this time where, so we are so divided as a nation. And so we thought that this would be a really good way to teach children to be cooperative if they have a common goal. And the common goal in this picture is to make beautiful music together because they all love music. And so that's how this story came about. And we look at a lot of different ways in which one book leads to another.
Mm-hmm.
Or that he has a few more stories in his memoir that can lead to short stories like these for children. And we hope to use them. It'll be bilingual, Chinese and English.
Mm-hmm.
And primarily, we would be sharing them, especially in those language immersion schools.
Right. Yes, I remember you guys sharing about that with us. That's so, so cool. Remind me of the name of the book.
It's going to be called Who Will Play With Me?
So do you, either of you, have any advice for the parents and grandparents out there who are watching that want to communicate these special life lessons with their kids and grandkids, but they maybe don't see them as often as they like?
Well, for me, I would send books, as gifts. So often, like for Christmas, my children are still sending me books.
Oh.
So it's like, I've enjoyed this book. Maybe I've shared the thought with them, and they will say, oh, Mom, here's another book like it. One book leads to another. It's kind of like so motivating, to have people do that. So I think sharing books are a good kind of gift that you could give to your children. And I think that that's one of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of a never-ending domino effect.
Right. And you can never have too many books, and sharing them after you've read them, you can share them with other members of the family, and you enjoy it. It leads to many more. I order books from Amazon, and then of course they know what you like to read, so they'll say, suggest.
There you go.
Yeah, and so it keeps them in business, but it keeps me entertained as well.
Yeah, it's a win-win.
Yeah. Well, in my case, I try to keep in communication with my grandchildren and great grandkids. What I did at my age, I don't need all the money I have, so I put a good check in there for them. So we got on Zoom and we had a countdown of 10 and everybody opened up. And in the letter, it was important to me. It was a full
Page letter.
Full page letter about the responsibilities of life.
Well,
and
what
the
he's
responsibility of funds as well.
What the lesson he was trying to convey is that he worked hard. Made a good living, and he wants them to be responsible and be financially independent. And so that was the lesson for this past Christmas. In addition, he also said that he would like to hear from them as to how they plan to use the funds. And if they didn't know, to please consult their parents or him. And they've written thank you letters and saying, I'm going to save my money for to buy a car or to eventually have a house of my own. I think that's how we try to convey our values to them and get them to talk to us about what their dreams are, what their future will look like.
Yeah, because it's kind of a two-way street, right? You can give them advice all day, but then you want to also hear, what their plans are and what they plan to do with that advice that you give them. And that just kind of makes it all worth it.
Yeah, we wanted to be sure they, as he said, don't blow
it.
Yeah, that's my last sentence. Don't blow it.
Right. Well, that's the kind of part of the mission of our grandparent storybooks program, is to connect those grandparents that don't see their grandkids and great grandkids as often, and just provide them with an opportunity to get on camera and read a story to them, not only to share that book, but to also weave in some family history, some family life lessons that kind of tie in, because there's infinite possibilities with infinite number of books.
Yeah.
It'll always be beneficial.
Well, we know that from what I've read about reading Legacies, that it's an exciting idea to, bring together parents and other adults to read to children, and children reading to children.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm all for supporting that kind of work. So thank you.
I appreciate this opportunity to share some of the stories, because when I was younger, I used to tell a lot of stories to my younger siblings, and there were 3 girls and the younger boys. I would read about a story and with the boys and girls in it, and I would use my brothers and sisters' name. Anyway, there are all kinds of stories we can modify and share together. Good stories.
I want to add on how important it is to have children write stories.
Mm-hmm.
And so by reading them stories, and if they can see themselves adding to that story and writing their own stories, I think that's a great accomplishment. That's a goal that you would want for young people. So get started with giving children books with blank pages. Mm-hmm. Having them start a story. I think that's a great way to increase their interest in reading stories.
Yeah, and I'm sure, Loretta, during your time as a librarian, did you facilitate activities where students were kind of writing their own stories during school?
Yes, definitely. We would talk about the story, and if it didn't have, sometimes I wouldn't tell them what the ending was, and I would
Ah,
finish the story in writing. And I would work with the teacher, because I couldn't very well, check everybody's work and respond to them. The teacher could, and then we would the next time come and share some of the endings that the children came up with. That was always motivating to get them to write. So.
yeah, for sure. Engagement is key. So we kind of touched on my last two questions throughout the interview, but if you have any specific life lessons in addition to the one that you've already shared, I would love to hear them. Any specific ones that you feel like have really stuck with you or have stuck with your grandchildren that you've taught them over the years?
Well, one of the things, like my father used to say, do more than expected in return. And I just can't help but remember my father used to say, when you meet people, friends and people, you want to get to know them. Get to know them for their character. Not how funny they are, making you laugh and everything, because they can say a lot of things that can make you laugh, but you study them, you know them for their character. Once you know them for their character, you can learn to like them. And once you learn to like them, then you can learn to love them. And that's the sequence. So that was the direction our dad always said.
Wow.
I think for me, the lesson that I try to pass down to my children is that try to do something for others. In other words, not be self-absorbed or think only of yourself, and to think of others. And I remember my mother, even in depression days, would send money back to China to some of the relatives who had even less. And that always impressed me, that somebody is thinking of somebody far away, and so generosity of spirit, and thinking not only of yourself but of the needs of others. So I hope that gets through to my children in the way that, say, I might donate to the Red Cross or the cancer or the food bank or whatever,
Right.
We always have more than we need.
Yeah, and it's one thing to, say those lessons out loud, but then for a child to see mom or grandma actually put action to their words is even more profound, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, you guys, thank you so much. We will talk to you soon.
Okay.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.